In 2014, a scientist named Regina Barzilay was diagnosed with breast cancer. Years later, she built an artificial intelligence to read mammograms. Then she did something no one had thought to try. She fed the machine her own old scans, the ones taken years before her diagnosis, the ones her doctors had read as completely normal. And the machine lit up. In her words, "It is quite clear that my cancer was seen by machines at least 2 years before my diagnosis. The signs were already there, hiding in plain sight. No human eye could see them, but the machine could." For a while, that was one strange, almost unbelievable story. Then, this month, it became a pattern. In June of 2026, researchers at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden published one of the largest studies of its kind in the journal Radiology. They took 3 commercial AI systems already used in clinics and turned them loose on nearly 89,000 mammograms from women they could follow for years, thousands of whom were later diagnosed with cancer. Then they looked back in time. The AI had flagged warning signs years before any of these women were diagnosed, 6 years before, on scans that doctors at the time had called normal. The study's senior author, Frederick Strand, put it plainly. Roughly 1 in 5 breast cancers leaves a trace an AI can spot around 6 years before a human makes the call. One crucial caution, right here. These systems were tested on old scans, where doctors already knew who had cancer. Proving they can do it live, on people we cannot yet diagnose, is a much harder test. We will get there. But first, how can a scan be normal and already contain cancer? To understand why, you have to know what a mammogram actually looks like to a human. Nearly half of all women over 40 have what is called dense breast tissue, a thick, cloudy pattern on the scan. One oncologist describes hunting for a tumor inside it as trying to find a snowball in a blizzard. A human radiologist looks for a lump, a shadow, something that stands out. The AI is not looking for a lump at all. It is reading texture. It measures hundreds, even thousands, of tiny patterns across the whole image, the grain and weave of the tissue, combining them in a way no human brain can hold at once. As one Harvard breast imaging expert put it, it extracts information my eye and my brain can't. And here is the strangest part. The AI is not only spotting a hidden tumor, it seems to be reading the tissue around where a tumor will one day grow. Scientists even have a phrase for it. It reads the soil before the seed. The normal-looking ground may already carry the faint signature of what is coming. This is not just theory. Take Deirdre Hall, a 55-year-old from Arizona. She went in for a routine mammogram, and the radiologist saw nothing. No shadow, no lump. Her dense tissue had hidden it, but the AI drew a small circle on her scan. A follow-up found not 1, but 4 tumors, caught early at stage 1, before they had spread. Her doctor was blunt. He said, "It camouflaged the cancer. Even I could have missed it." One careful distinction, because it matters. Some of these tools find a cancer that is already there, just hidden, like Deirdre's. Others go further and estimate your risk years into the future. And that is a forecast, not a diagnosis. But both point in the same direction. The machine can see what the trained human eye cannot. Which raises a darker question. If this works on breast cancer, what about the cancer that almost always kills, precisely because we catch it too late? Her name is Christina. For years, something was wrong. She was losing weight, dozens of pounds, with strange digestive problems that doctor after doctor waved away. By the time anyone found the cause, it was pancreatic cancer, stage 4, the worst stage. It had already spread. She was 40 years old and she was told she had about 6 months to live. Christina, against every odd, is still alive, but the way her cancer hid for years until it was almost too late. That part is the rule, not the exception. Pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest there is. Only about 13 in 100 patients are alive 5 years later. And here is the cruelty of it. Caught early, while it is still local, around 44 in 100 people survive. Caught after it has spread, 3 in 100. Living or dying comes down, almost entirely, to how early you find it. And pancreatic cancer is almost never found early, because the pancreas is silent. It sits buried deep in the body. There is no lump you can feel and no screening test that looks for it. By the time it finally speaks up, it is usually already shouting, which is exactly the gap a team at the Mayo Clinic working with MD Anderson set out to close. They built an AI and aimed it at the CT scans that millions of people already get every year. For a kidney stone, for stomach pain, for almost anything, scans of the abdomen that happen to include the pancreas. The team gathered around 2,000 of these scans, all taken before a diagnosis and all read by human radiologists as normal. The AI caught 73% of the cancers hiding there. The human specialist, on the very same scans, 39%, nearly double. And on average, the AI spotted the cancer about 16 months before the diagnosis, and in some cases, up to 3 years, on scans of people who, on paper, looked perfectly healthy. The lead doctor, Ajit Gonka, described what it does. This AI can now identify the signature of cancer in a normal-looking pancreas, but he was careful too. In a disease where we have been wandering in darkness for decades, he said, this is a milestone that shows us the finish line, but we still have to get there. And that line, we still have to get there, is the most important sentence in this whole story, because almost everything I have just told you carries the same catch. It was all done in hindsight. Researchers took old scans from people they already knew had developed cancer and asked the AI to find the signs. That is very different from catching a real cancer in a real person, in real time. So does it actually work? Not in hindsight, but on real patients. As it happens, here, there is genuine forward-looking evidence. In a separate Swedish trial, researchers ran exactly that live test. More than 100,000 women, with AI helping read every mammogram as it came in. The result? The AI-assisted screening found 29% more cancers and cut the radiologist's reading workload nearly in half. That is real, and it is happening now. But, and this matters enormously, finding more cancer is not the same as saving more lives. We do not yet have proof that catching these cancers earlier means fewer people die from them. That proof takes years, and the trials are still running. And there are harder truths. Screening earlier and more aggressively has a cost. Find more cancer, and you will also flag things that look like cancer but are not. False alarms that lead to anxiety, to biopsies, and sometimes to treatment a person never needed. That 6-year early breast study, for instance, was right about who was healthy roughly 90% of the time, which sounds excellent until you realize it still means about 1 in 10 healthy women gets a false alarm. And these tools are not neutral. One approved mammography AI studied at Duke University gave black women 50% more false alarms than white women, which is exactly why, for now, none of this replaces your doctor. Every one of these systems is a second set of eyes. It flags a scan for a human, and the human makes the call. And that is worth sitting with, because back in 2016, a famous AI pioneer predicted we should simply stop training radiologists, that AI would soon make them obsolete. A decade later, there is a shortage of radiologists, busier and better paid than ever. The machine did not replace the expert. It handed the expert a new kind of vision. And if this feels new, it should not. We have lived this story before. 1895. A German physicist named Wilhelm Röntgen is alone in his lab when he notices a faint glow across the room, coming from rays he cannot explain. Not knowing what they are, he names them with a mathematical symbol for the unknown, X-rays. A few weeks later, he asks his wife, Anna Bertha, to hold her hand still over a photographic plate. When the image appears, she is staring at the bones of her own hand, her wedding ring floating loose around the finger. She whispers, "I have seen my death." For the first time in human history, we could see inside a living body without cutting it open. Röntgen won the very first Nobel Prize in physics for it, and he refused to patent it so the whole world could use it freely. And from that one moment, every few decades, we learned a new way to see. In 1971, the CT scanner let us see the body not as a flat shadow, but in slices. Then the MRI let us see soft tissue, the brain, the organs, in breathtaking detail. Each leap was the same kind of miracle. A machine letting us see what the human eye, on its own, never could. The X-ray let us see inside the body. The CT and the MRI let us see it in 3 dimensions. And now, Artificial intelligence is doing something genuinely new again. It is not just seeing inside the body. It is learning to see the future inside the body, the disease, years before it ever announces itself. So, is this just 2 studies about 2 cancers? Not even close. On at least 5 different fronts, the same revolution is unfolding. One AI reads your medical records, no scan at all, and flags 1 in 4 future cancer patients years early. It is in front of regulators as we speak. Another reads a single chest scan and predicts your lung cancer risk up to 6 years out. Blood tests are being built to screen for 50 kinds of cancer at once. But here is the honest catch. The biggest trial of one of them did find plenty of cancers. It just could not yet prove it was catching them early enough to change the odds. This science is genuinely, stubbornly hard, and AI is already in the operating room, helping doctors catch the growths they would otherwise miss. More than 1,000 AI tools have now been cleared by the FDA, the great majority of them in medical imaging. The early detection era is not coming. It is already here. So step back and hold both truths at once. The promise is real, and so is the caution. These are early days. The tools have blind spots and biases. Finding cancer earlier still has to prove that it saves lives. All of that is true. And it is also true that, for the first time in the history of medicine, a machine can look at a scan a doctor has called normal and quietly say, "Look closer. In 2 years, right here." The cancer that kills you is almost always the one we found too late. And we are, finally, learning how to find it early. The technology was never the question. Whether we test it carefully, deploy it fairly, and keep a human being in the loop, that is the choice. And it is still ours to make. Regina Barzilay built a machine that could see her own cancer before she knew it was there. The only question left is whether we will let it help the rest of us look.